Hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. This is a little solo episode for you guys today. It's been a couple weeks since I released one, but this past week I've been super focused on studying, learning more about, and actually teaching around communications. So that's what I want to share a little bit with you today. Just to start off with, when I say communications, I think that can be a pretty broad topic to people. Overarching, communications to me is how we relate to people, how back and forth humans are communicating with each other. Things that go into that are how we speak, sure, some of the words that we use. There's non-verbal communication, being written communication, actually non-verbal, as well as the actual non-verbal clues and hand gestures and facial expressions that we give, which is super important. If you didn't know, I have been studying communications for the last almost 15 years now, since I went to a specialty high school for mass communications. And so I'm by no means a novice, new to this subject matter, yet I consciously and actively still study communications on a regular basis, right now on a daily basis. And so I want to share with you today three of the top most important pieces of communication that can immediately take you from being a so-so modern communicator to an advanced communicator, one that doesn't have to be afraid of meeting strangers, speaking to people in public. You don't need to be afraid to share your opinion anymore if you can really take these three tips and strategies to heart. The first tip, the first strategy is based around curiosity. Now, where does this come from? With the Journey to Legacy podcast, I interview a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of coaches, and time again, the subject of communication and curiosity in communication comes up. Another way to think about curiosity is when you are speaking to someone, you need to be genuinely interested and curious to learn more. A mindset that I urge all of you to adopt that goes directly with this is the mindset and the understanding that I do not know. It's that you know that you don't know everything. And with that, if you can believe that to your soul, it's going to invoke a sense of curiosity in you whenever you're communicating with others, because you have the understanding that I know I don't know everything. And so this person, whomever I'm communicating with, is going to most likely present new information to me that I've never heard before, that I've never heard in the manner that they're communicating before. And if we aren't genuinely curious and interested in what somebody has to say, then we're going to miss that, right? If we are just constantly sitting there sort of bored almost in our minds, we're not really paying attention because we don't really care, we're not really curious to hear, to learn, you're going to miss so much of communication, right? With this curiosity piece, with this admitting that you don't know, directly comes listening, right? Active listening. Don't be consciously and constantly thinking about what am I going to say next. If you adopt the mindset of curiosity in communication, then once somebody finishes speaking, you're genuinely just going to be curious to learn more about what they said, genuinely curious to have them explain deeper. So tip number one for communication, go into conversations with the mindset of, I know that I don't know, but I want to learn more. I'm genuinely curious to learn more. Now, tip number two, when it comes to communication, it's actually my favorite. This is going to turn you into a super communicator instantaneously. And I actually hinted at it just now at the end of tip number one. And tip number two is to rephrase what people are saying to you when they're done speaking. Now, what does this do, right? And I said it relates to tip number one. When someone is talking to you, you're just actively listening. You're not worried about what am I going to say next. If you're focused on I'm going to rephrase to them what they said, and then I'm going to ask more questions and dive deeper, then you don't need to be worried about what am I going to say next, right? You just need to be worried about listening. But what does rephrasing actually do? Rephrasing communicates to the other person that you were listening and that you are actively and genuinely interested in what they have to say. By doing this, you're going to start to bond with people on a level that you've never experienced before. If you've ever read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, this goes directly along those same lines. By rephrasing what someone says, by communicating to them, you're directly communicating to them, hey, I've heard you, or I believe that I've heard you. And then essentially you're expressing, tell me, did I hear you correctly? They're going to start to dive deeper. People love to talk about themselves, me totally included. And so with that, when you rephrase something to somebody, when you rephrase it and you invite them to explain deeper or to explain, actually, you didn't really get that correctly 100%. What I really meant by what I say is XYZ, you're allowing them to talk more. You're allowing them to share their opinion more, and it's going to automatically, psychologically cause them to like you more, to want to communicate with you more. I'm busy reading the book Supercommunicators, and it talks, a part of it, directly about this rephrasing. And they did a study where they got people together that strongly oppose the ownership, the amendment of gun rights, and the opposite, people who are strongly for gun rights, right? People who believe that public shouldn't own guns, and they got people together who believe that the public should own guns, right? Some of these people, the people against it, had family members killed by people in the public that had guns. On the other side, there were people of the NRA who owned 40 to 50 guns. They got them together. And you would imagine that these people clash and butt heads a lot, right? But the experiment that they did was when they were communicating, they got them to concentrate and focus just on listening and rephrasing to the people what they said and asking, did I hear you correctly? Can you explain deeper? Most of the time, they weren't talking about gun rights, okay? They were just decided to get people that have opposing viewpoints, people that would typically clash, and do this experiment. The experimentees, the people in the experiment, in the study, they reported afterwards that they had some of the best conversations of their lives. They reported that it was the first time as an adult that they ever truly felt heard and understood. Imagine that, feeling heard and understood when you're speaking to somebody that's theoretically the exact opposite of you. Whatever one of your strongest viewpoints, right, in life, right? Just take a moment and think about it. Whatever one of your strongest viewpoints are in life, imagine just speaking to somebody that feels the opposite, yet you manage to bond on a level so deeply emotional, you feel uplifted, you feel renewed. That is what rephrasing in communication does to the other party. So if you can focus when somebody is speaking to you, actively listen, being prepared that when they stop speaking, I'm going to rephrase what they said, ask if I heard correctly, and ask them to explain more, you're going to start to bond with people so much more. And now, tip number 3 when it comes to communication is one that really takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of ethics, I think you could say, with it. And when I say it takes a lot of ethics, I mean that it's something that you can attempt to fake. It's something that when you're learning to be a better communicator, you're going to actively try and do this, but if you're not really genuine with it, it can pretty easily be spotted. And so you need to practice, and that's okay, right? It's okay that in the beginning, that's what's going to happen, because we're all practicing here. And tip number 3 is actually through verbal and non-verbal cues relating to somebody as they speak, mostly on an emotional level. What does this look like? It means that if somebody is speaking quickly and they're upbeat and they're excited and they're happy, you need to mirror that emotion. When you now speak, when you now respond to them, you need to be upbeat, speak quickly, be happy. This shows, it's a psychological principle that shows you are connecting with somebody else, right? Same principle from earlier. People like people that are like them. People like to talk, be heard, and by connecting with somebody on the same level, the same emotional level, they're going to feel that you are more like them, and they're going to feel the connection is so much better, right? And so this goes the same way. If somebody is having a emotional, tough conversation with you where they are down, a little slow, sad, depressed, you need to meet them on the same level. If you can do this, how you bond and connect with people, it's going to change your entire life. Again, within the book Supercommunicators that I'm busy reading, they did another study, or actually it was done through NASA. NASA was busy hiring for brand new astronauts. This was done in, I believe, in the late 1990s or the early 2000s. They were gearing up for the space program, and at this time they had a plethora of applicants, right? They could choose to be very picky. And so they decided to go back and review past applicants. They recorded a lot of these interviews, past applicants. What can we decipher from the astronauts that turned out to be really good, and good in the sense of relating to the other astronauts when they're up in outer space, in the space station? Who has the emotional intelligence to relate to people, to bond, to comfortably live with somebody in a extremely close quarters where you can't get away? This is a huge piece of the puzzle. They decided, okay, this is the most important piece. We don't care as much anymore, or well, they do care, but they're not going to prioritize, is this person a astrophysicist or not? They're prioritizing emotional intelligence. And so they went back through and they listened to the interviews of the people they had hired in the past, of who turned out to be good, who turned out to be bad. And they specifically listened to the way that they laughed, the way that they mirrored laughter in conversation. So when the interviewee laughed, did the person that they were interviewing laugh the same, in a similar way? This turned out to be a direct correlation to the astronauts' emotional intelligence and a direct correlation to their future performance actually as an astronaut in the space station, being able to relate to others, being able to problem solve together, emotionally be there for not just others, but for themselves also. So with tip number 3, when you are communicating with somebody, if you want to bond with them, if you want them to trust you more, focus on connecting with them on the same level that they are speaking to you at, right? Too often, day to day, we have too much extra shit in our minds that we're thinking about, stresses, anxieties, problems, that when someone else is speaking, we're not really listening, we're not really connecting. But with these 3 tips, being genuinely curious when you go into conversation, focusing on rephrasing to somebody what they said and asking, did you really understand? And then focusing on emotionally connecting at the same level. You can do those 3 things. The level that you're trusted, your level of leadership, and your level of being able to bond and connect with people is going to skyrocket. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to this little episode today. Let me know what you think. If you relate to this, if you have something to add to it, reach out to me on social media. I can literally be found anywhere on the internet. Otherwise, I urge you to please share the episode with someone that you know, with a friend, a family member, a colleague that can take a little bit out of this. I greatly appreciate you. Until next time, you've been listening to the Journey to Legacy podcast. My name is Wayne Veldsman. Peace.